Today on Dead Dodge Garage, it's this cute little thing. This isn't super cute, actually. Yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and fix everything wrong with this real fast. Yes. And it's restored. This is a 1965 Dodge Dart GT convertible. This Dart belongs to my friend Tony, which is really interesting because his brother also has a convertible early Dart. I don't know what it is about brothers having matching cars. The Davises used to have almost identical Subarus. And then, of course, you know, my brother and I, both Mopar psychopaths. Anyway, these early A-body Darts are direct descendants of the 60 to 62 Valiant. An interesting, kind of strange little car. I hope to get my hands on an early Valiant someday. For one thing, they're just kind of cool and funky. But for another thing, they're the predecessor to all A and B body Chrysler cars. And that's kind of cool. So I'd like to check out where that DNA comes from. In any case, this early mid-60s Dart, handsome. The lines are simple, straight, you know, inoffensive. They still have the basic shape of the 63 4 cars here, although they no longer have the big Pi 10 headlights around. They have a straight across grille and trim to match. Hey, it's hours later and the sun is shining. Wow, the taillights were also new for 65. Interesting. Of course, the trim panel there, same deal. Now the rear bumper did not change for 65. It did for 66 to a taller, bulkier unit. But they actually left the quarter panel the same, and you can see this shape back behind it. Now this Dart was actually gold originally. Now it's teal, or whatever you call this. It has white performance stripes in the hood indents and matching stripes on the trunk. And as you can see, it has some patina. Whatever they did to prep the metal for paint here on the hood didn't seem to really take. And I have a theory this thing was probably used as a table for many years. It's a Chrysler product in Washington, so of course it does have a little bit of rust, but it's definitely rust light. It's a pretty sweet little car. With a couple things fixed and a shiny new paint job, it would be really nice. Of course, if you know me, you know I'm not really into shiny new paint jobs, and I think this thing's pretty cool how it is. These custom leather seats in particular are a really nice touch. They're comfy, and they look cool. I can't say the color really matches anything else on the car, but I like them. Oh, there's a nifty aftermarket steering wheel with wood grain attached to a column that's not firmly attached to the car. The gauges were special in 65 compared to 64 and 6, and different in a Dodge than in a Plymouth, and I like them quite a bit. I really like these hubcaps. I've actually never seen that style before. Now you might hear those magical letters GT and expect to find some horsepower under the hood. However, you might be slightly disappointed to find this, the Slant 6. I'm not disappointed. I love these things. All right, a 273 would have been nice. This is actually a newer Slant 6 out of a late 70s car, I believe. Engineering. This would have had air injection from the factory and it's been plugged. The end studs on the exhaust manifold are broken, unfortunately. I'm not here to fix that. The main thing I'm here to fix is this. There's no mechanical fan. They installed this fancy, thicker aluminum radiator from Champion, which is great, but the factory fan wouldn't fit on that spacer, so they just left it off and installed an electric fan. That's not a good idea. An electric cooling fan can work quite well if it's attached to the radiator with a shroud. This one isn't. It's not even centered over the core, and it's just kind of zip stripped in place, so not ideal. The overflow hose flapping in the wind, also not really ideal. There's a nice safety upgrade here. This thing has a dual circuit master cylinder. That wouldn't have been factory. I think I need to adjust the brakes because they're a little funky feeling, but this is a nice thing to have. That's not supposed to be like that. Exhaust leak on a Slant 6? I won't believe it. I like the chrome valve cover. That's a nice touch. I don't like the lack of a PCV valve, and I really don't like the Holley 1920 hiding under there. You see, the Holley 1920 is the worst carburetor ever made. Some guy made a YouTube short about that once. The Holley 1920 is absolutely, without a doubt, the worst carburetor ever made.
And that's why it's on the floor.
The problem I generally have with the Holley 1920, clogged idle passages. This one doesn't seem to have that. It actually does work fairly well. So it'll be staying. I wish we had the earlier style carburetor from the car, but oh well. So the program on this car is pretty much the same program on every car I touch. Work through the little things. Make sure the tune is about right. Put a mechanical fan back on. I think we'll leave the electric for a backup. It's on a thermostat switch, so that's kind of nice. But then we'll just generally go through this thing. Check the timing, fiddle with the idle mixture, try and make it be all it can be. I will at least glance at the tune-up parts. Kind of looks like they've been in here for a while. Instead of points, this thing is equipped with a retrofit Pertronics unit. So that's pretty cool. One less thing to worry about anyway. My approach to cars like this, something I like to call the 5-minute fix. I actually did a video on this last year sometime. I need to do another one because I forgot to say a bunch of things, but the basic premise is this. You check the timing, then you check the idle mixture, check the idle speed, then you go back and check the timing again, and you just sort of work those things until the engine is idling and running nicely. Then you make sure it works at higher RPM and you're probably good to go. At the same time, you're looking for things like return springs that don't work, leading to throttles hanging open, or vacuum nipples that are missing, or loose carburetors, or, you know, throttles that don't reach full throttle. Oh, which reminds me, I actually need to adjust the kickdown on this thing too, because it doesn't really work right. That single pulley, single groove that's in use on this car, that's attached to the harmonic balancer. Those other two are extra. Obviously, there's tons and tons of room to work there, so this will be fun. Now, don't yell at me, but I really don't spend as much time in these early A-bodies, and I actually didn't know that these columns just go through the firewall with a rubber grommet around them. And that's pulled out and loose, so I don't know what I can really do about that. Okay, part of the brake pedal feel problem is being caused by this. They use the original style push rod, which is great. It's got a little springy on it, and it's not locked into the back of the master, so the first bit of pedal action is just compressing that spring and making contact. Then it's brakes. Oh wow, that's cool. Someone put modern seatbelts in it. Except there's nowhere to like attach them to the car. 1964 was the last year for the push button transmission, which people call the typewriter transmission for some reason. I accidentally called it a telegraph transmission in a video once. That was silly. Anyway, 65 then is the first year for this fancy floor shifter. Oh, here, we'll just restore this real fast. Oh, wow. This will come as a shock, but the gauges don't work. Ashtray. 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 Why can I see the ground through this ashtray? Oh, here's a neat feature. Self-deleting Dodge emblem when you close the hood. Haven't started it since earlier. Squealy belt, of course. Runs okay, but there's a cylinder dropping out at idle. I guess I didn't shut the hood hard enough. Why are you the way that you are? We're inside now, because it's way too nice out there. Well, I've wasted at least an hour pulling that stuff out, so there's kind of sort of room for a fan. Kinda. But my giant stack of fans is missing. These are the only ones I can find, and even that is too tall and hits. I really need a factory Slant 6 fan, which is very nearly flat, and it's a 4-blade. I think it would fit just fine. But all that would rely on having one, which I don't. So, for now, let's move on to tuning. You know, might be running just a little rich. The electric ratchet didn't even slow down pulling these plugs, so that's neat. Notice these are a 5/8 hex taper seat instead of the earlier washer style plug. That's what would have been used in the factory engine, but not in this thing. Another fun thing, there's no PCV valve. They broke it off and cauterized the wound and then just plugged it at the carburetor end. So I found the last piece of hose that's anywhere near the right size. My local parts store is out for some reason, and it's the perfect length. So now I just have to go pay $2.14 for a new PCV valve. I actually cut my teeth on these Slant 6s. One of my favorite things about them is how easy it is to service the ignition. It's just great. And the firing order, same as most inline 6s, 153-624. Slightly broken there. Rotor looks beautiful. So does that fancy Pertronics. The coil wire is actually a little corroded, crusty, but I can't get a replacement today, and that means it's fine. Off to get dart parts. Maybe I'll run out of gas. Welcome to my storage unit. Yeah, this thing cost me like $200 a month for almost literally nothing. Okay, there's some useful stuff in here. To anyone who wanted me to save that 318 core with the crank broken in half, if I ever need one, I've got options. Oh, I almost gave up. And then I found a slant fan. Nice. Here's a complete lightweight 80s Slant 6 in pieces. That might become a fun engine someday. I unseized this 400 engine a long time ago, and we're actually going to take it out of mothballs and rebuild it for a Roadrunner of all things. That's coming up, I want to say soon. You see, the Slant 6 barely even needs a cooling fan, so they could get away with this cheapo tiny little thing with almost no pitch to it. Anyway, in typical Dead Dodge fashion, nothing's going well, and the spacer is rusted or corroded solid to this fan. Oh yeah, I think that works. It's not even gonna hit anything. Fresh plugs are in. PCV valve and random length of hose installed. Now let's do some tuning. Well, it still sounds like butt, and it's barely reading. All right, I am kind of often afraid of getting zapped reaching through all that while it's running. So here's the technique for this. It had a lot of timing in it, let's just say that. Slant 6 should be around 0 degrees base, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, it's at 1. Smooth things out a lot. Now let's tune the carburetor. That idle screw is buried against that spring. Now we need more return spring. With the idle speed just roughed in, let's check the mixture screw, which I baselined at a turn and a half out. Okay. Oh, I think that turn and a half setting is probably about right. Maybe turn and a quarter. Listen to that. That's timed at 1 degree base. It might like a couple more degrees. Some slants do. This is a good place to start. It's much smoother and happier. Admire the performance exhaust. Oh, here's how you get to the distributor hold down. Being a later style engine, this just has a normal clamp, unlike the goofy early Slant 6 setup, which is only adjustable within a certain range. And it's very annoying. It's been running for a little bit. There is coolant circulating. Mechanical fan is moving some warm air, and the electric fan has not turned on. Remember that thing I said a bit ago about making sure the carburetor's tightened down? Just for the record, I hadn't done this yet. Yep, good thing to check. Okay, now I have to check the mixture again. Kickdown adjustment. It's actually pretty important because it doesn't only control when the transmission kicks down, but it controls the upshift points. And if it's too loose, you'll get soggy, not satisfying shifts, which is what this thing has currently. I was actually just talking about this with Donnie, the Big Wrench Tech. His satellite had a bit of an issue here. Obviously, this is a Slant 6 and the setup's totally crazy, but the same principle applies. With full throttle here, you want that lever on the transmission fully extended. And it's pretty obvious here that the carb is all the way open, but the linkage is still sloppy. So that kind of explains that. I'm gonna pop this ball stud connection off and spin this adjuster out and see if that helps. Okay, I went out 5 threads and then back in 3, and that seems to be really close. We'll see what it drives like. Speaking of what it drives like, I just realized I really should have done a before drive on this one. It ran like butt, it sounded like butt, it shifted like butt. It was just not good at all. Missed opportunity. Look at this thing now. I polished the valve cover and it's shining like a diamond in a goat's Charger 225. I love that. Before we see what it's like to drive this thing, I'm thinking nice on a day like today. I just want to drive this point home about the 5-minute fix. If you couldn't tell, it didn't take long. It wasn't complicated. Nothing I just did took special tools. Yes, it took a bit of experience at kind of knowing what to expect here, but these are things you can learn with a little bit of attention to what your car is doing. Some choice things: vacuum gauge is nice, timing light's nice, flathead screwdriver, some basic wrenches. You can get really far toward making it run a whole lot better than when you started. So yeah, it's really just all about ungoofing people's goofs. Let's see what it's like to drive this thing. Okay, things are starting to make sense here. One other thing I do want to look into on this car: voltage limiter for these gauges. The gas and temp gauge are dead, which is just a normal classic Mopar problem. In fact, I've got a whole video about that too, but it's getting late and I just want to drive it. Oh hey, the fan turned on after it sat and heat soaked for a minute. Oh yeah, I flooded the crap out of it doing the kickdown adjustment. That's my bad. Oh, I forgot about the return spring. Please hold. This is extra worthless garbage. So I shortened up the factory spring back here. It probably hates that and, you know, might break, but it's better than it was. Definitely flooded it again. Just one of many services I offer. Really? It's fine, I could just reach up here and there we go. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. And it's supposed to be vented, so that's not good. I'm just super bad at stuff. If you know me at all, you know I have to test a car and make sure it throws rocks. And that one does, strangely from both tires. But will it burn rubber? Oh yeah, seatbelt's more of an idea. Yeah, that's no better. Manual steering, yep. Now some Slant 6s do burnouts. Some don't. I feel good about this one. There's a clown. Alright. Oh. The speedo cable's unhooked. Here, we'll just do that. Then we can watch it as we go along. Check to see how much fuel's in it. Hopefully it's fine. Oh, the body roll. This is nothing like the cars I've been working on lately. It's so stock. It doesn't drive bad. It's just wobbly. The brakes do work. They're just not great. I think that's an adjustment issue either, right? Not bad. Not bad at all. So teal. Certainly not the best driving A-body of all time. A sway bar would be nice. Yeah, now the auxiliary fan's just on forever, but that's okay. It's helping, I guess. This is what I would qualify as a pretty good Slant 6. It does burnouts. I like that a lot. Yeah. Alright. Maybe I just put the mechanical fan there to feel good about myself, but I stand by it as a good decision. I wish this sucked less. This is over centering, right? So this spring really isn't doing anything else when it reaches that point of the rotation. Oh, it also has a piece of rubber. Maybe that's the problem. Okay, I can fix that. Sticky throttle aside, this thing is great. The idle jumped up again when I closed the hood. Okay. Figured out a way to make the seatbelt at least look like it's working. So that's cool. See if I can make another cloud of smoke. You know, for posterity. The floor shifter's sweet. Okay. Before you go ripping your perfectly good 225 Slant 6 out of your Dart, see if it does that. You might be pleasantly surprised by the performance. I've never been a convertible guy, but I must say, not having the hair or the beard to whip up into my eyes has certainly improved the experience quite a bit. I looked like a hobo the entire time I owned my Cobra replica, and it just wasn't the most enjoyable of things. Have you ever noticed my glasses are always crooked? Let's test the shifting again. 1, 2. That's pretty good. 3. All right. Whee! This thing does not corner like even my Demon with just the tiny sway bar, let alone the Llama Barn Valiant, the 79 Chrysler. They're not even in the same, like, universe as far as handling. But it's fun in a silly kind of way. Yeah. Brakes. These brakes remind me of every Mustang I've ever driven. Well, I think we all learned a valuable lesson. And nobody died. I do have an extra chin, don't I? Well, I'm going to see if I can triage the steering column situation a little bit. Trim that hunk of rubber, maybe mess with throttle springs some more, and advise replacement of the fuel cap. Okay, I guess I might plug in the speedo cable and check and see if maybe the gauges are just unplugged. That would be funny. None of that's really important for our purposes here, so thank you as usual for watching. And remember, don't leave your classic cars in the garage to turn into tables for 30 years. It's a lot more fun to get out and beat on them.